Welcome to Adam's Athenaeum. Let's take a look together through the news and records of our times as we try to shed light upon the unvarnished truth. Thanks for coming back today to listen to this episode where we need to talk about the political fear-mongering taking place in the news cycles. Where do we begin? Let's start with where I started on my research. Let's just do a simple DuckDuckGo search and ask federal officials warn of heightened threat to election from violent extremists. And what do you know? Article after article shows from Yahoo, federal officials warn of heightened threat to election from violent extremists. CNN on MSN.com. Feds warn that domestic violent extremists pose heightened threat to midterm elections. CBS News on MSNBC. Government warns of heightened threat to 2022 elections fueled by rise in domestic violence. And then we got the next several articles. As we keep going down this list, everyone has almost the same exact verbiage in their headlines. Federal officials warn of heightened threat to election from violent right-wing extremists. Okay. Why is my question? Are they going to give us an answer? Or are they just going to vaguely say it and then all copycat one another? Well, let's dive into some of these articles. Let's start with what some people considered to be a decent news source, Twitter. All right. Here on Twitter, it says, federal officials warn that domestic violent extremists pose a height threat to the 2022 midterm elections. This from CNN Politics, right? They've got, so far, 45 retweets, 82 likes, but I'm sure it's going to keep on growing as it's CNN. They'll probably get pushed forward in the algorithm, but who knows? Since Elon Musk took them over, maybe they will be, I don't know, downgraded in the algorithm, I guess you could say. Let's check out some of these other articles. We had one from... It was a very weird website I've never heard of, but they actually had part of their, at least part, if not all of their article correct. Let's check out this article from Mango Dating. Don't take this as official news or truth sourcing or anything like that, but it looks like they are quoting CNN. Says federal officials on Friday warned that domestic violent extremists pose a heightened threat to the 2022 midterm elections in a joint intelligence assessment sent to state and local officials and obtained by CNN. The bulletin, released by the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, and National Counterterrorism Center, says that perceptions of election fraud will likely result in heightened threats of violence. However, the bulletin did not list any specific credible threats. See, that's what I'm looking for, is... We have all these headlines that say the same thing, posing, right-wing extremists pose heightened threat to midterm elections, but where's the proof? You dig a couple small paragraphs into the article, and it says the bulletin did not list any specific credible threats. Oh, okay. So does that mean to say that this is similar to the parent-teacher school board meetings, where the Department of Justice labeled parents who were peacefully protesting and speaking their minds about what their children were being taught in school, they got labeled domestic terrorists? Interesting. Are you starting to see how this narrative flows? Let's dig into some more of these articles, just in case it hasn't fully sinking in yet. Let's switch to, what do we have here? Forget the... Got KITV4, Island Television. Looks like ABC News affiliate. Feds warn that domestic violent extremists pose heightened threat to midterm elections. Oh, look, they used that same picture from CNN News on Twitter. Federal officials on Friday warned that domestic violent extremists pose a heightened threat to the 2022 midterm elections in a joint intelligence assessment sent to state and local officials obtained by CNN. What do you know? We already knew that. The bulletin, released by the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, U.S. Capitol Police, and National Counterterrorism Center, says that perceptions of election fraud will likely result in heightened threats of violence. The bulletin did not list any specific credible threats. Verbatim, word for word. copied and pasted and maybe changed the headline. What do you know? Following the 2022 midterm election, perceptions of election-related fraud and dissatisfaction with electoral outcomes likely will result in heightened threats of violence against a broad range of targets, such as ideological opponents and election workers, it states. That's funny, because the last time that I look back on history and ask myself what kind of political violence happened around election, I remember Antifa and BLM beating right-wing Trump supporters who they called fascists in the streets for no reason other than they declared they're a fascist. I remember everything that happened under the BLM and Antifa riots of 2020 and ever since then. And I would argue that the real danger comes from left-wing nut jobs, far left lunatics. Or maybe like the guy who attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband. What was he, a Green Party member? I don't think it was the Tea Party. I'm pretty sure it was a Green Party member. Fact check me on that. But let's pull up one more article here in relation to some of this voter fear-mongering, election fear-mongering in Arizona. I don't know if you've heard, but some people, some citizens have tried to make a case about armed vigilantes guarding ballot drop boxes. I don't know if you've seen the short film by Dinesh D'Souza called 2,000 Mules, but it documents how, at least according to what they found, it seems that in the 2020 election, it seems as though there were people who dropped large amounts of illegally cast ballots at very odd times of the night in mass quantities. Who's to know if they were officially counted or not, or if they were thrown away? I'm not making any claims or accusations. I'm just telling you what this movie was about and how it relates to this next story. So people are upset that a couple of armed men were near a ballot drop box center in, I believe it was Maricopa County in Arizona. Here, let's pull this article up together. It's going to be from MSN. So it says federal judge considers request for restraining order against vigilantes surveying Arizona drop boxes. So just kind of background, these guys are watching the drop boxes, making sure none of these illegal or suspicious drop-offs happen. After further review of the law, the judge basically surmised that he has no authority to dictate otherwise, that these men seem to be operating within their First and Second Amendment rights, as Arizona is an open carry state, and they are not causing violence. They are not provoking violence. They're sitting there peacefully protesting, if you will, and openly displaying their firearms as they're legally allowed to. So as we kind of go down through this article a little bit, the judge says, I'm going to take this matter under advisement. People are trying to make a point that he was a Trump appointee, so this must be politically driven. But if you listen to what he says in his justification, see, here they are trying to debunk the movie called 2,000 Mules. They try to defend the Arizona laws, saying that Arizona has strict rules for who can and cannot carry ballots to ballot boxes. Liberty said that he loathed the term mules as a pejorative, but understood the concept. It's the same thing as saying a coyote or a smuggler. There's no difference. I don't care if you're insulted by the term that you are. You're stupid. Let's see. Scroll down just a little bit further. She testified that the armed people, who is this? Now let's skip that part. Sorry guys, there's a lot in this article, a lot of fluff, more or less. Okay, here we go. Legal arguments. The judge, after taking a long afternoon break, forced Fox to admit that there had been no true violence. He suggested it would be hard for him to issue an injunction based on speculation that violence might break out. The judge also suggested that Fox was suggesting a low standard for incitement, which is what the plaintiffs suggested Jennings was doing in connection with the so-called vigilantes. The judge further questioned whether taking photos and videos of voters approaching ballot boxes was an act of intimidation or whether it was protected activity under the First Amendment. I feel like I'd be encroaching on the First Amendment activity on these facts, the judge said with regards to the cited acts of filming, but he said the activity would become more troublesome the closer the alleged vigilantes were to the ballot boxes or to the voters' faces. Bach suggested that Jennings was doing more than she was talking about in the submitted evidence and was, in his estimation, encouraging activity that went over the line. I think I'm constrained by the Constitution, the judge said, as to an injunction proposed by the plaintiffs. I think I have to respect the First Amendment. And then down here at the very, very bottom part of the article, because they know most people aren't like you and I and don't read full articles, it says the underlying issue is a conflict between the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and voter intimidation bans. Arizona is an open carry state. So again, by all legal resources we can find, these guys are, as long as they stay X amount of feet away from the actual ballot drop boxes, don't aim their weapons at things they don't intend to shoot, and follow all other laws, they're perfectly fine to be there and ensure that nothing sketchy happens. See, the left-wing media, the far-left Democrats, the progressives, the ideologues that run this country are fear-mongering about this election because they know they're going to lose terribly, assuming that enough right-wing voters and independents vote right-wing or somewhere in the middle, and that we essentially replace the Democrats. That's what needs to happen. Every Democrat needs to be voted out of office. Whether we go with any other party's candidate, I don't care, as long as it's not a Democrat. And as long as it's a person who stands up for what they say they do. So what are some key takeaways? Okay, we continue, just to kind of remind everyone here, that we continue to break previous election records for voter turnout. They say Joe Biden got more votes than any president before him. So I'd say if Republicans are making it harder to vote, then why are we continuing to shatter records? I will remind you that it was Democrats and Democrat-run legislatures who unconstitutionally and illegally changed voting procedural laws in 2020 before the election to extend the vote deadline, affecting which votes and how many would be counted in the final tally. And let's not forget that many judges wouldn't even listen to these cases before the election results came in because there was no current damages. But then after the laws have been changed, they wouldn't accept the case since, well, there's new laws. Far left progressive Democrats and ideologues have said how Republicans and their supporters are maggots, M-A-G-A-T-S, right? For MAGA supporters, maggots, semi-fascists and fascists. Yet clearly, their supporters don't understand fascism. Donald Trump was not a fascist. Otherwise, he wouldn't have peacefully left office. The progressives and the far left use fascist tactics and fascist groups, such as BLM and Antifa, to achieve their political aims, and would fight for all Black dormitories at colleges, bringing back racial segregation. This episode is to remind you, to some degree, what's at stake in totality of this next election. I remember telling my parents before the 2020 election, this is the most important vote of our lifetime. It is a vote between freedom, American way of life, and capitalism versus socialism, communism, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what did they say? I just can't vote for Trump. I can't take the orange man. I can't take what he says. And that's fair. Everyone for themselves. I won't ask you to change your morals. However, I reiterate, this also is the, if not one of the most important elections of our current political cycle of, say, a decade or 2 decades. America will fall if we continue to let it be run by Democratic hands, by Democratic mayors and governors, sheriffs, congressmen and women, speakers of the House, all the way up to the vice presidency and the presidency. America has been ruined. You can't go anywhere in life without experiencing some sort of crisis. It's either the fuel crisis, the baby shortage crisis, the labor crisis, the wage crisis. I don't know if I said already, the fuel crisis. We're running out of diesel. Crisis after crisis, inflation, hiding recession because we changed the definition. America has fallen. She is broken. If you can't or won't accept that, you're not doing enough introspection. You're not actually looking at this country and what's happened. Do you remember paying $2.50 a gallon for gas under Trump? And now Biden says that he's doing a great job lowering gas prices to $3.79 a gallon. Gas prices are so low because Joe Biden would tell you that when he came into office, they were $5 a gallon. I just reminded you that under Trump, they were about $2.79 a gallon, not $5. The Democratic media establishment lies to your face every day. They do not respect you. They don't care about you as an individual. They don't respect what you have to think or your opinion. If you're a Black conservative, they don't see you as Black. If you're a minority woman who doesn't believe in abortion, they don't see you as a minority. Probably not even as a woman. I will be making more videos describing and reminding to you what has happened and taken place over the last 2 years. That's all it's been. And detailing to you, as I can with this episode, how the left is going to lie to you yet again. They're going to try and claim that right-wing extremists are about to bring down this election if they don't get it their way. With no credible proof. They said it themselves in every article we clicked on. How do we know? Well, because they all copied and pasted each other and just changed the article headline. We read it for ourselves. They're putting it in your head that Republicans cannot win an election unless they steal it, unless they suppress voters, unless they illegally change things. Have you noticed over the last couple of years that every single God-loving thing that the Democrats have accused Republicans or Trump of doing is exactly what they're doing themselves? Have you noticed that yet? Can you admit that yet? That's where I leave this episode. I think I made my point clear. And if I didn't, this shirt should say the rest. Exercise your right to vote in this midterm election. As my parents have done, they've researched the hell out of every candidate on their ballot. Not just the people they intend to vote for. They researched the people that they were going to vote out to kind of compare and contrast. Okay, if this person that I don't like has these values, but there's someone in the middle, supposedly, but they have the same set of values as this person on the far left that I don't like, well, I'm definitely not voting for this person in the middle. I'm going to have to stick to the vote on the right, or vice versa, however that goes, right? That is great. That is phenomenal. I'm proud of my parents for doing, such hard work. Really taking the time and energy to learn about their candidates, about the politics happening around them, and whether or not these candidates are true to what they say, or if they're just shadows of who they want to be. This is what everyone needs to do. You need to be informed. You need to get out and exercise your right to vote. It's your privilege and a right. Exercise it. I mean, you love talking, right? You love not going to jail. You love not having illegal searches and seizures. You love being able to photograph people in public or record conversations. Why not exercise this right? Go and vote. If you're upset about gas prices, but you've never voted a day in your life, go vote to change it. Don't use the excuse of, oh, my job, my kids. Figure out someone to watch your kids for 2 hours and tell your work that you have a legal obligation to let me go and vote. And go and vote. It's that simple. You can do it. We can all do it. And with enough of us voting legally, the way that we want our voices heard, we will sway the election. No matter what other shisty stuff takes place, if enough of us get out and truly vote our minds, we will sway the election no matter what. So what I'm saying is, don't fall for these false headlines that a few paragraphs in tell you there's no source, there's no facts behind what I'm telling you. We're just putting it out there into the ether and hope that you eat it for dinner. And don't question it. Question it. Question everything they're telling you. With an election cycle up, why wouldn't they lie to you? Go and vote. I will see you there. And I'll be making another episode tomorrow. So actually, I'll be trying to do 2 more episodes this weekend. One I'll do live tomorrow. One I'll upload later in the week. So please come back in the next couple days to check out whatever we're going to be talking about next. If you got any friends or family that need to hear this message, please feel free to share it with them. If you got to disagree with me, I'd love to see it down in the comments section with your proof, not your emotions. And of course, you can find me on all these websites, Rumble, Locals, Twitter, YouTube, at Adams Athenaeum. I post there at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times. Just depends on the work schedule. And I hope to see you all there. Thanks for coming.